Okay, so today we have a brand new topic on the Game Dev with Nine Squirrels series. Today I'm going to be talking about dealing with feedback. And I have to move my mic stand. What is? Well, there's something. What is that? Is it my? There's something in front of my thing. Here, wait. I'll just move me down a little bit. There we go. Perfect. So we're going to be talking about dealing with feedback, and this is something very important, and it's something that doesn't get talked about very much. If you are the creator of any sort of game, music, book, any creative thing that you put together, people are going to play, read, listen to whatever you do, and they're going to have a opinion about it. And you're going to have to deal with that opinion. And sometimes that opinion comes from people who, pay your bills. They're a publisher or a producer or somebody who's, responsible for you. Sometimes they come from people inside the team, and a lot of times they come from your audience. And I want to go through how I deal with this kind of feedback in a constructive way and get that feedback into my products in a way that doesn't destroy my soul and is productive for the team. So let's get started with that. So the first thing you need to know about getting feedback is it's not personal. And it feels that way sometimes. It's very easy when you get feedback to immediately be like, fuck you, buddy. I know what I'm doing, and you don't. And you just have to pull back, right? It's not personal. Some people are dicks, and you'll know when somebody's a dick, but most people aren't, right? Most people want to give you feedback because they genuinely want whatever it is that you're doing to be better. Usually because they're the ones playing it or listening to it, and they want it to be better. And so from the very beginning, you need to put your sort of ego aside a little bit, and assume that they're not talking to you in the sense that, you need to, you did a bad thing or you're a bad person. That's not the case. They want your product to be better, and they've given you some feedback for that. And so what you need to do is in a mental space, instead of it being you on one side of the table and you and them on the other side of the table and you guys fighting about whatever this thing is, put yourself both on the same side of the table and assume that there's a problem that both of you are trying to solve. And they're not yelling at you. They're not upset with you. They see a problem and they want you to help them solve this problem. If you can start with that mindset, everything beyond that goes a lot easier. So the next thing, if they tell you that they're not having fun, you can't debate that. If they say, I don't like it, right? You can't say, well, but other people like it or blah, blah. The one absolute certainty that you can get from somebody who's giving you feedback is if they tell you they aren't having fun, you can be sure that they aren't having fun. Don't debate that. That's a given, right? Now, your next question is to figure out who this person is and why they're not having fun. There's a lot of questions that come from that. But I've seen people that debate this very beginning topic. Someone will come in and say, this game's not fun. And they'll say, yeah, it is fun. I'll tell you why it's fun. Stop. They didn't have fun. They wouldn't have come to you and given you this feedback or told you anything if they were having fun. So I'm blah, blah, blah. It's not productive, right? If they tell you they're not having fun, that is a true, absolute given statement. You need to accept that before anything useful can happen, right? And the next thing people come up with is they'll say like, well, they're not playing it right. They didn't understand how to play my game. Yeah, that's not a thing. I know you think that's a thing. I know you think they're not playing it right is a thing. That's not a thing. If they're not playing it right in your mind, and let's use an example. Let's say you made this strategy game, and you expect in this strategy game for the fun of the game to be at the beginning of the round, the first couple turns of the game where they're building up their armies or they're building up their economy, and that's a really interesting thing to do. And everybody who plays the game just immediately gets a bunch of units and zergs out and goes to the other side of the screen, and they die and they don't have fun, and they say, this game's not fun because I keep dying. And you're like, because you're not playing it right. You're supposed to be... All right, that's what you expected them to do. They didn't do what you expected them to do. But what they did is what your players are going to do. And if they didn't do what you expected them to do, that's not their fault. That's your fault. You didn't give them the right information and the right clues. You didn't explain to them through the game how they were supposed to play the game. If they didn't play the game right, that's not their fault. That's your fault for not making it so that the only way to play the game is the correct way to play, or it was so obvious that the correct way to play the game was that way that anyone would have figured it out. Or, better yet, that there wasn't only one way to play the game. And that's really where I would like to go with this is, if you've got a game and you have the opinion that there is sort of, this is the way you play the game and this is the way you set up your deck in a card game, or this is blah, blah, blah. If there's only really your way to play the game, there's a real problem with your game. That your game is probably not really fun because there's not a lot of different ways to do what things are doing. Players play games not so they can go through your vision and do it the way you expected them to do it, but because they want to feel smart. Players want to get in and they want to solve problems and they want to feel like they did something interesting and intelligent, and they want to figure that they won because they thought about this and their idea was original and new and they were better at it than other people because they... And none of that can happen if you've set up a game where there is a right way and a wrong way to play it. And so this whole, this is the most common junior designer thing you'll hear. They're like, oh yeah, they're not playing my game right. Yeah, that's not a thing. So the next thing that you need to kind of keep in mind as you go through this is that they're not a designer. That's not their job. Being a designer is your job. And this is really important. And the reason why this is really important is you need to understand how to understand their feedback. Somebody comes to you and they say, you know, I played your game and it wasn't very much fun, but I played World of Warcraft, and in World of Warcraft they did it like this. You should do it like that. Okay, the first part of that statement, I played your game and it wasn't very much fun, we've accepted that that's true. We've accepted that I can't argue that. If he says it's not fun, it's not fun. That's an objective opinion that he has, and he has the right to have it. You have to take that at face value. And if he's the only person who's not having fun and everyone else is having fun, well, maybe this game's not for him. But if a whole lot of people are not having fun, you have to accept that. You have to accept these people are not having fun and there's a problem. Now, the next step is he wants to solve your problem for you. Now, remember, he's not a designer. Being a designer is a real job with real skills, like being a plumber or a electrician, and you learn how to do things. And this person hasn't been through that process, probably. And so if they haven't been through that process, they probably, I mean, if you were a plumber and some guy came to you and said, you know, hey, my sink is clogged up. You know, my cousin, when her sink was clogged up, it was because she poured all this oil and grease down her sink. So I guess this sink's full of oil and grease, right? You're the plumber. You're not supposed to hear, oh, the sink is full of oil and grease. You're supposed to hear the sink is clogged. Now you, the expert, you're like, I don't know if it's grease and oil. It could be any of a number of things. And you go look at it and you're like, no, this isn't because of that. It's because of this other thing. And the knowing why something is that way and knowing how to fix it, that's your job as a designer, not their job. And so you have to be very cautious about when people come to you and try to solve your problem for you. That's not their job. Their job is to tell you that they didn't have fun and that this isn't good. Your job is to figure out how to solve it. Now, their solution might be a good solution. That sink might be full of grease. That's certainly a possibility. But there's a lot of other things that could have gone wrong. And you as a designer have to be aware enough to not just immediately take their feedback and say, well, they didn't have fun and they want it to be like this, so I have to make it like this. No. They didn't have fun. Now I need to go deconstruct why they didn't have fun and why they thought that this solution might be the right solution. If they played Hearthstone and they said, you know, in Hearthstone, the way the deck works is like this and I have more fun. All right, well, what is it about the Hearthstone deck that makes that thing more fun? And what is it that our game is lacking that thing is solving? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to do the exact same thing Hearthstone did. It just means that thing that Hearthstone is achieving, they like, and the thing that you're making doesn't achieve that and they don't like. Now you need to go find that solution, and that's your job. Not just doing whatever the person who didn't like your game told you to do. Now, I'm going to give you here's a little bit of MBA-ness for you. There is a concept that Toyota developed called the five whys. And the five whys were a way to problem solve at Toyota. And the famous example they give, and I know I'm getting this wrong, but I'm getting it close, is that there was a pump that, or I'm sorry, that the conveyor belt, the line that the cars are being built on, stopped. And they said, well, why did the line stop? Why did somebody pull the thing and make the line stop? Well, they stopped because this pump that's supposed to be making something doesn't work, and we had to fix the pump. All right, why didn't the pump work? Well, the pump didn't work because the filter was clogged. Okay, why was the filter clogged? Well, the filter was clogged because it was full of these little tiny metal shavings that that clog the filter. Well, why does the filter have all of these metal shavings in it? Well, the filter has these metal shavings in it because there's this kind of vent on the back of the thing that allows the metal shavings to come in. And okay, well, why is the vent back there? Why are there metal shavings coming into this vent? Oh, well, they're coming from this machine over there, or some crap like that. I don't remember exactly how it works. But at each sort of step in the process, you kind of dug deeper and deeper. Now, it would have been very simple to just say, well, why did the line stop? Well, the line stopped because the pump didn't work. Okay, we'll fix the pump. Well, what's wrong with the pump? Oh, the pump's got the filter's clogged. All right, great, put a new filter in it. All right, I put the new filter in it, but the thing's going to happen again. And until I figure out why the filter was clogged, I'm just going to have to keep putting in new filters, right? Okay, so I figured out why the filter's clogged, because of these metal shavings. All right, well, let's move this where the metal shavings don't fall into the thing. Well, but there's still metal shavings falling from somewhere. That shouldn't be a thing, right? And so this idea that every time you find a problem, you don't just look at the surface and say, oh, well, this is the number one thing I see young designers doing with their projects is they'll have, oh, this one unit's overpowered. Okay, great. I'll give him some more health. Or this one gun is too weak. Okay, make that gun do more damage. These very quick surface solutions that people come up with, they're usually not really solving the problem. You really need to dig down and figure out the real heart of the problem. Now, I want to actually talk about another thing, which is, in all of this, you do have to think about your context. And one of the big things you need to ask is this actually my audience? Sometimes you will get comments from somebody who you're like, that's a valid comment. You didn't have fun. You prefer this other game. But you know what? We're not actually making that game. And we're not making a game for that audience. And that's a valid response for you. Not every game or every piece of music or every book is going to be perfect for everybody. That's not the way entertainment works. I can't stand country music. I just don't like it. I grew up in Texas. I grew up around country music, and nothing will set me off more than listening to some, I don't know, make it stop, right? That doesn't mean country music sucks. That doesn't mean that country music musicians need to change their music to make it better for me to listen to. It just means I'm not a guy who likes country music. And listening to my comments about how to make country music better is pointless. It's the same with video games. If you've got somebody who comes in and plays your game and, they're a big Hearthstone player and they want to play Hearthstone and you're making a super casual, hyper casual Twitch game, all right, the suggestion that you need to make your game deeper and blah, 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 that may not actually be a good suggestion because that's coming from someone outside of your audience. Right? Another thing they have to look at in the context is, how long did this person play? In many cases, somebody who's played a game for a very, very short period of time, they don't understand your game yet. And this is a real problem in the modern world of game development because a lot of times you only have a very short amount of time. In hyper casual games, you have like 10 seconds at that, maybe less, for your player to understand your game. And if they don't, they've moved on to the next hyper casual game. That market is hard. But for other games that are a little bit deeper, a strategy game or a first person shooter or something like that, Sometimes people will play a game for half a minute or two, and they immediately have feedback. They're like, "Oh, this isn't. I don't like. I don't like. I don't like." Give it a second. Sometimes people need to get in your game and play a little bit of your game before they fully understand what they like or what they don't like, or they fully understand your decisions. Now, again, in the old world of video games that I grew up in, when we made games that actually got put in boxes and put on shelves somewhere, you had a lot more time to play with. Because somebody who's gone to Walmart and bought a game in a box and installed it in their machine and has to actually take it back to Walmart and get their money back if they don't like it, they're probably going to give you an hour or so. That's likely. The world isn't like that anymore. In the world of Steam and try-buy games, you only have a couple minutes for people to understand your game and like your game or not like your game. So this is something that's a little less so than it used to be, but it's still the case. I think you have to look and say, what kind of feedback are you getting? I mean, because some feedback is, I hate your game, but some feedback is, I played your game for 20 minutes and I think this unit is overpowered. Well, maybe if you played the game a little bit longer, you would know a little bit better. That's something you have to look at. My daughter, by the way, just came and said goodbye to me. I have no idea where she's going. That could be maybe the last time I ever see her. Work. She says she's going to work at Shake Shack. So that's the joy of live streaming. My daughter is going to work at Shake Shack. I had no idea. But anyway, back to the content. The other big thing is, where and when did somebody play? I get feedback from people who take games to conventions. And they say, oh, somebody didn't understand this or they didn't read this. And I'm like, yeah, they were at a game convention and it was super loud and there were 5 people standing over their shoulder watching them play. And they had the game designer right there staring over their shoulder. And there was rah, 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 music in their ears. And they've only got 8 hours to go look at 500 games. That person probably did not spend an hour playing your strategy game. That person probably is not giving you the best possible feedback that you can get. And so you need to take that feedback in that context. Sometimes this person played this game and it can be positive as well. We have a number of sponsored streamers who are streaming our game, right? And, we gave them a copy of the game, which was nice of us, and they're playing the game and they want to be nice. And they're kind of giving us the benefit of the doubt. They're being very positive about our game. Well, yeah, they're on stream. They're not, unless they're dicks, they're not going to get on stream and say this game sucks or I hate this thing. They're going to be nice about it. And so even though you're getting feedback that says they really love the game or whatever, you do have to take that in context and say, well, this person did get a free copy of the game and they are on a live stream where they're trying to have fun and trying to make people happy, which means they are going to try to have fun. So, you have to take these things in context. Now, the other one, I will say, some people will get on your game in stream and they'll trash your game in stream. And they'll be like, this game sucks and I hate this game and this art's crap and blah, 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 blah. And you have to ask, well, are they doing that because they genuinely feel that? Or they do that because that's what's funny or that's what's interesting and trashing a game looks good and they think that's going to get them audience? You have to be in this context. And then the last thing, did they win? And this is something, I'm surprised how many people don't know this. If somebody wins your game, they like it a lot more than if they lost your game, especially in multiplayer games. If you get 5 people in a multiplayer game and, one guy gets his ass handed to him, he's going to look for reasons why he got his ass handed to him. And number one reason is not going to be in his head, I suck, right? They're not, get good is not what this guy wants to hear. He wants to hear, there was a reason why I lost. I lost because this unit wasn't powerful enough, or this strategy should have worked, but it didn't, and your game didn't support it, and blah, 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 blah. And those things may be true. Or maybe he just sucks. And that's a possibility, right? And you have to look and say, did this guy not like my game because he got cheesed off because he lost? Or did he not like my game because he genuinely didn't have fun and felt that it was balanced poorly or wasn't fair? And the opposite is true too. People who win your game, they will say, oh yeah, this unit's not overpowered at all. No, this gun's great. This gun's fun. I had a great time shooting this gun. I'll give you a very concrete example. We used to have a mechanic in Last Regiment of stealth. And it was very difficult to explain to people because of the way our turn resolution works, sometimes you didn't see a stealth unit appear. And so it was actually very difficult. A lot of people thought it was a bug. A lot of people thought, hey, this unit just appeared out of nowhere. I didn't see it before. The game was broken. And they got really cheesed off. And they were like, this stealth thing is no fun. We got to take stealth out of the game. Stealth is no fun at all. But the guy who had the stealth unit, he loved it. He was like, oh yeah, I was behind this mountain. People couldn't see me. I was shooting my gun at people. I was killing stuff. I had a ball, right? People who were using stealth units loved it. People who had stealth units used against them hated it. And so, which feedback are you listening to? Now, in the end, with that one, we realized that it was actually quite difficult for people to understand what was happening. And because of that lack of understanding, we actually cut that mechanic from the game. But that was an actual real thing. And a lot of people had very different feedback about that particular mechanic based on whether they were the one using it or they were the one having it used against them. So that's something you need to look at too when you're getting your feedback. Now, they don't know why you did what you did. And let me be clear on what I mean with that. A lot of times when you get feedback, somebody will say like, well, this wasn't fun, or I didn't like this thing didn't make sense to me. And you're like, oh yeah, well, we had to do it like that because the way the technology in our game works is this feature works like this. And because this feature works like this, we can't have that thing happen here because that thing hasn't happened inside the code yet. So it has to happen here, right? And that's maybe true. Maybe that's a valid case, and that all the things I just said are actual true things. Your player doesn't know that, and they never will. They're not going to come to your dev stream and listen to you explain why. They're just going to know they wanted that thing to happen, and it didn't happen, and they were cheesed off because it didn't happen. And that's all they will ever know. They will never know. They'll never hear your side of the story. And so if it's an important enough thing that it's going to consistently be a problem, your answer of, well, our technology doesn't support it, or, the way our game works, nope, you're going to have to go back and change something. You have to cut that feature, or you have to cut the feature that's causing the problem, or you have to rewrite that piece of technology. You're going to have to do whatever. If it's a big enough problem, your answer of, well, our game just doesn't work like that, it's not a valid answer, because your user will never know that piece of information. And they will only know, I needed this game to be like this, and it wasn't like that, so it wasn't fun. So here I'm going to tell a story. One of our designers was mentioning earlier she knows this story. So I'll tell the story for the people who don't know this story. I go to the Philippines quite often. A lot of our dev team is in the Philippines. About half of our dev team is in the Philippines. So I go down to Manila quite often. And for those of you who have never been to Manila, let me be very clear. That place is a shithole. And I know Trump got in trouble for calling places shitholes, but I'm sorry, Metro Manila, full-on shithole. That is a terrible city, and I hate that anyone has to live there. And I've always hated Manila. I will continue to hate Manila until they fix it, which will not happen in my lifetime. And I'll tell you a story about Manila. Manila is, by the way, all the Filipinos are like, yep, totally a shithole. Like all the Filipinos in chat are like, yep, Chris, that's absolutely true. So I stand behind my Manila is a shithole statement. Even Filipinos will tell you Manila is a shithole. So anyways, let me give you an example of why. So this is on one of my very first trips to Manila. And I fly into the airport, which is right in the center of the city. And I get on I forget what the name of the freeway is, but there's a freeway that goes from the airport to, it goes to Makati, which is one of the nicer parts of Manila. It's sort of a little enclave of sanity within Manila. It's like, it's not the EDSA. There's some flyover. And so I get on this freeway. I mean, it's a full-on, 4-lane freeway. And it's not a freeway. It's got tolls, a tollway, whatever, a toll road. It's a road that goes to, it's a road. And so anyway, I get on the road and it's backed up. It's jammed up, and it can't get anywhere. And I'm like, what? It's the middle of the night. It's like 9 o'clock at night, 9 or 10 at night. It's all jammed up. I can't figure out why. And I realize as we get forward, there is an enormous rock on the middle of the road, like a big piece of corrugated concrete, like it's some piece of road that something is chipped off of. But I mean, it's the size of it's big. It's easily the size of like half a car, and it's just sitting in the middle of the road. How it got there, who can tell, right? Dropped off the back of a truck, or I don't know. But somehow this enormous rock is right in the middle of one of the biggest freeways in the whole country. And everybody's just kind of going around it, right? And that's causing traffic. And I think to myself, well, that's certainly inconvenient, right? And I get to the hotel and I go on about this. And I'm only in Manila for about 2 or 3 days. And so it's 2 or 3 days later, and it's time for me to go home. And I'm going back to the airport on the same road. And I look and I see, after 3 days, the fucking rock is still there in the middle of the huge piece of concrete. Nobody has moved this piece of concrete, but somebody has gone and put warning cones around it, right? That was their solution, right? The biggest freeway in the country, and their solution to huge rock in the middle of the road is to put some cones around it so people don't hit the rock. And I thought about this, and I've always used this example as how people solve problems, right? They just like, well, there's a problem. People can hit the rock. Well, they put some warning cones around the rock. And, you know, as much as I give people in Manila shit, I try to be empathetic and say, like, somebody's job was to fix this, and that's what he came up with. Now, why? Well, probably because he didn't have the machinery to move the rock. Right? He probably didn't have there was a big ass rock, and I don't know what you need. You need a front end loader or a bulldozer or something to move this rock. Somebody said, hey dude, fix this problem. And the dude was like, I don't have a front end loader or a bulldozer, but I got some warning cones. So I'll put the warning cones out. That's what I got. Right? And that's how he solved the problem. Now, later on, we were building Last Regiment, and one of my designers, who, by the way, happens to be Filipino, one of my designers, a guy named Nelson, was building a level. And in the level, there was a mountain. And the AI couldn't figure out how to get past this mountain and walk around the mountain. And it broke the level, right? The level was, it doesn't matter. There was a level, and the level was broken because the AI units couldn't figure out how to get around this mountain. And so I talked to Nelson. I was like, Nelson, we gotta fix this. This is broken. He's like, oh yeah, I got it under control. And so I went on about my business. I came back a couple days later. I said, Nelson, did we fix that level? Oh yeah, I fixed that level. And I said, well, what did you do? He's like, well, I moved the rock. And I was like, no, you didn't actually solve the problem. You just got rid of this one iteration of the problem. The problem is not that this rock was there. The problem was that your AI don't know how to move around rocks, and you can move the rock anywhere in the level that you want. Sooner or later, the AI is going to get trapped behind the rock. We need to come up with a solution to figure out how to tell the AI to move around rocks. And so this has become sort of a byword in my studio of don't just move rocks. You have to actually look at the systems. You can't just say, hey, someone's going to hit that rock if you don't put, if you don't move the rock. Okay, I'll put some warning cones around the rock so nobody hits it. That didn't solve the problem of there's an enormous rock in the middle of your road, dude, right? And in the same way, when Nelson just moved the rock, that didn't solve the problem of AI don't know how to move around rocks. And so one thing that you need to get better about when you're looking at criticisms of your game is when somebody says this level's broken because the AI didn't move around this rock, or this level's broken because this one unit's not fun. The answer may not be fixing that one unit. The answer may be that there's something systematically wrong with your game, and you need to look deeper. You need to, and this is related to that same issue I was talking about earlier about the 5 whys with Toyota. You have to look deeper and ask, why is this thing broken? What is the real problem here? And am I solving the actual real problem? And is the problem systematically solved so that it's not just solved for this one level or solved for this one occurrence, but it's solved for anywhere else that this thing could happen anywhere else in the game? And this is critical to good game development. So when you're solving things, go big or go home. I think Sid Meiers has his list of 10 things that you should know about game development. And this is one of Sid Meiers' rules. It's actually a pretty good one. If you were asked to find a number between 1 and 100, you would say 50. And they would say higher. And you would say 75. And they would say lower. And you would say something between 50 and 75. And that is the fastest that you can narrow down the solution. This is a type of sort, an algorithmic sort. If you are trying to solve problems with little tiny iterative solutions, you're going to do a lot of them, and it's going to take a lot of time. If the problem is this unit is too weak, double its power. Is it still too weak? Well, maybe that wasn't actually the problem then. Or double it again. Maybe it was way too weak, right? But if you're doing little tiny iterative changes, especially early on in the process, you're probably wasting a lot of time. If you're getting feedback and you're actually going to respond to that feedback, and this isn't just about adjusting numbers, right? That's an easy way to explain it. But there's other things that you could be adjusting in your game. This art style is too dark. Oh, okay, well, we made it a little bit lighter. You probably didn't solve that. You probably needed to make it a lot lighter. You probably had to rethink a lot about your art style. If something is bad enough that somebody's giving you feedback about it, the solution to it probably isn't really small. Might be, probably isn't. So I would say when you're actually getting feedback and you're responding to that feedback, go big or go home. Use big changes. And a lot of times you'll do a big change and it'll be too much and you'll have to pull back from that. But now you've set your boundaries. This wasn't enough. This is too much. The answer is somewhere in between, but at least I know where my top and my bottom end are. And that's where you want to get very quickly with your changes. Whether it's adjusting numbers or looking at different art styles or looking at pacing or tempo, if you're making little tiny changes, it's probably not enough. I had a conversation with the designers, and we're going to talk about this later in the stream. I had a conversation with the designers just yesterday about the story and the campaigns, and they had prepared a new section of the campaign for me, and I read it, and I just didn't understand it. I was just critically like, I don't know how this fits in the story. I don't know why this is interesting. It totally didn't make sense to me. And I went back, and they were offering these sort of small changes. They were like, oh, well, we could add this one character, or we could do this one small thing. And I was like, no. This is so totally broken that you guys need to step way back from it, totally rethink it, look at how it fits into the whole story. Maybe it's time for you guys to go look at the whole story again and see how does this fit within that, what comes after this. This is a much bigger issue than you think it is. And they were trying to solve it with, maybe we could add this one character here, or maybe we could change this one bit of line. And I'm like, no. This is way more broken than, and it's hard because you spent a lot of time getting to that thing that you have right now. And it's very easy to be resistant and say, I don't want to change this, or I don't want to do this thing because it's so much work to change it or to do this thing. Go big or go home. If you're going to change something, you got to make changes big enough that it matters. All right. That being said, when you start changing stuff, keep your experiments controlled. If you're changing all of the health numbers, and you're also changing all the attack numbers, and you're also changing this other thing, and then giving it back to somebody to play, it may be difficult for them to know which part of that thing helped and which part of that thing didn't help. When you're making changes, do them one at a time. Do big changes to this system, then a big change to this system, and test in between each one of those changes. If you're doing changes to 5 different systems all at once and then handing it back to your team and saying, okay, test this and see if this is fun, they're going to be very confused about those results. Did these results come from this? Did they come from that? And this is just science, right? If you go talk to scientists who do any kind of research, they'll tell you, don't move all your variables at once. Change one variable and see if changing that variable makes a change. Don't change 5 different variables, because if I change 5 different variables and I get a new result, I don't know which one of those variables produced that result. And your players, they certainly don't know. They're not qualified to make those kind of decisions. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So that's what I've got about how to get feedback, how to work with feedback constructively. I would love to get some feedback on my presentation about getting feedback. This is going to be turned into a YouTube video. Some people are going to see it on Reddit or places like that. Please go to the YouTube video. Go let me know what you thought about this. Are there other things that you as a developer or, some other form of creator, whether you're a musician or an artist or whatever, are there things that you do to get better feedback and to help you deal with your feedback? I would love to hear that stuff. I'm always learning new stuff. If you're interested in this, you want to talk about it, there is, I can never point to things on my screen. I'm really bad at this. Here, wait, I know what to do. I have to put my finger right here. And then, wait. I have to go over here and then, no, that's the wrong thing. I got to move the thing. This. Here, right? Wait, right here. Right there. See that? That's a Discord link. If you go to that Discord link, this is where people who are into our games and into our stuff tend to hang out and, do stuff. Go hang out there. Tell us what you think. That's what I got. Thank you very much. We'll do another one of these next week.